We will see in the Sharia standard, there is no standard per se on Gharar, but this is something that will come over and over in the various different Sharia standards. So as you know, in Sharia standards, AAOIFI Sharia standards, there are few different types of contracts being covered, like sale contracts, Murabaha, Tawarruq, Salam, Istisna. All those are sale contracts. Ijara is a lease contract. Wakala is an agency contract. Then you have Musharaka, Mudaraba. Those are partnership contracts. Now, in all such contracts, there could be Gharar. So we will see often the ruling could be different because of the existence of Gharar. So this is a very summarized version of all the different types of Gharar. It's basically taken from the SIPA book, but very well relevant for those who are appearing for CSAA as well. So you can see in case of the form of the contract, one of the Gharar could be because of two sales in one. So based on this principle, we will see, by the way, Gharar basically means uncertainty, keeping or leaving ambiguity in the contract. Now, not all types of Gharar would be impermissible. Some Gharar would be tolerated, but some Gharar would be not tolerated. There are also additional conditions for that. We'll not go to those things for today's session. But in general, if we look at this one, for example, two sales in one, Allah's Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam has prohibited combining two sales in one. Now, what is the outcome in the overall Sharia standard? We will see in many clauses of the AAOIFI Sharia standards, it is over and over mentioned that it has to be separate. Like, for example, if it's a musharaka mutanaqis or diminishing musharaka, then you cannot combine the sale agreement and the lease agreement, or the partnership joint ownership agreement and the lease agreement. If it's a murabaha, you cannot combine the wa'ad together with the purchase, with the sale. All those cannot be combined together. Each has to be separate and unconditional. Of course, there is a Sharia standard on al-jamu' bain al-uqud, combination of contracts. You can look further into it. It can be under the same file. However, one contract cannot be conditional into the other one. Especially there are few which are directly mentioned in Sharia, for example, bay'in wa salafin, combining between a qad, a loan contract, and a sale contract, because the sale contract could be a hayla, a prohibited trick to charge interest, right? So those are some of the things you can find details in al-jamu' bain al-uqud or combination of contract Sharia standards. Contract contingent on a future event, a contract which is conditional upon a future event. This makes the form of the contract Gharar, and hence we will see that or contract effective on a future event. So it will only affect in the future. So we will see that because of this, it's a Gharar. We will have a prohibition of forward and futures, especially where both counter values are differed. Now, in case of Salam, what happens? In case of Salam, it's also a forward contract, but you have to pay the price on a spot and get the delivery deferred. This is allowed by Sharia. In case of Istisna, what happens? Istisna is a very special contract. It's a manufacturing order contract where the commodities will be deferred, of course, because it has to be customizedly built or constructed or manufactured. But the price, it can be fully deferred, it can be fully paid on a spot, it can be paid on different milestones and phases. Now, if we keep istisna aside, there is no other contract, a sale contract, where both counter values can be deferred. Rather, it has been prohibited by Prophet ﷺ, since he prohibited bay'ul kali bil kali. Al-kali bil kali means deferred for deferred, because it has extreme gharar, extreme uncertainty, as both counter values are deferred. However, if it's a sale with either of the counter values paid on spot, then it's fine, as we already discussed. If it's a sale with a future date, it's not valid. It has to be something that mentions that it is initiated immediately. Of course, except lease contract, ijara contract. Ijara could be ijara mawsufa fi dhimma, forward ijara, meaning that we can sign a contract today that the ijara or the lease will start let's say from next week, from next month, right? That is fine. So the rental will only be effective from that particular future date. Of course, subject to the availability of the rental item. Let's say it's a car rent. The rental will start only from tomorrow, 6 a.m. And it's, let's say the rent is based on hourly price, but the car was only made available from 7 a.m. So the lessor, the owner of the car, will not be eligible to get the rent of that 1 hour because it was not made available during that time. So that's a different case. But otherwise, sale contingent on a future event is not valid. Similarly, options contract is also not valid because of the gharar in the form of the contract. What is the subject matter in an options contract? Put option, call option, are those subject matter that has been validated by Sharia? No. It's just a right, and also it has a lot of uncertainty. There are some rights Sharia has recognized which has some sort of certainty, but there are other, especially options contract, when the contract itself is traded. This is something, it's a high level of uncertainty in the form of contract, and you can see those are being discussed, I believe, in the Sharia standard on financial papers or selling commodities in the organized markets. Most probably those are being discussed in those Sharia standards. So these are basically because of the gharar in the form of contract. Now, in the subject matter, for example, if the subject matter is not in existence, then this is an issue. So, for example, when it comes to Murabaha, when the IFI is purchasing the asset from the vendor and then selling to the client, what if the subject matter is not existent, or it is not owned or not possessed by the IFI? Then it will trigger a Sharia non-compliant event for the IFI. Hence, the IFI needs to properly own and possess before it can sell to the client. And this is why, if you look at Murabaha Sharia standard, where the question is, can IFI appoint the client as an agent? So you can find in AAOIFI Sharia standard, in the default practices, that the IFI should directly purchase or appoint someone else, not the client. Only if it's a dire need. What is the explanation of dire need is not mentioned, but for example, it's a very specific business category where IFI doesn't have any specialization, or IFI couldn't find any other agent. In that case, IFI can appoint the client, and the client has to execute according to basically the steps that have been proposed, mandated by AAOIFI Sharia standards, for example. So in the first step, he has to procure from the vendor, then he has to hand over the possession to IFI. It could be constructive or it could be actual possession, and then only he can purchase it from the IFI and execute the Murabaha agreement. So if he is not following the sequence, so the ownership and possession is not clear for the IFI, then it may trigger a Sharia non-compliance event. So this is because there would be a gharar or uncertainty in the subject matter of the contract. Specification, if it is not specified, then it makes a problem in all types of sale and lease contracts. So in the sale contract, if we don't specify in Murabaha what exactly is the asset is, then it makes it a voidable contract. In a salam, in istisna, in tawarruq, in all types of sale contracts is the same. In ijara, if it is not specified what exactly the asset is, or what is the type of lease, for example, if it's a lease of human, ijaratul ashkhas, if it's a human being leasing, meaning in other words, employment. So what he is being employed for, or what is the work scope that we are looking for in terms of time, in terms of project, etc. If it is not specified, then it's gharar, and it makes it fasid, it makes it voidable. Voidable doesn't mean that it becomes compliant immediately, rather it has to be, both parties need to agree upon. The specification needs to be done as soon as possible. why, by the way, why is this elimination of gharar in the very first place being emphasized? To only ensure that both parties know exactly what they are doing, and there is no point of information asymmetry, especially the material information. So there is complete satisfaction between the parties. This is what one of the objectives in fiqh mu'amalat al-maliyah in Islam. If we look at Al-Quran Kareem, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَلَا تَأْكُلُوا أَمْوَالَكُمْ بَيْنَكُمْ الْبَاطِلِ إِلَّا أَن تَكُونَ تِجَارَةً عَنْ تَرَاضٍ مِنْكُمْ. Do not consume each other's wealth, but how? Through tijara, through business, through trade, عَنْ تَرَاضٍ مِنْكُمْ, with mutual satisfaction. So this mutual satisfaction is not there when the gharar is extreme. And these are some examples of extreme gharar. Okay. In terms of delivery of the subject matter, some of the gharars could be like sale of debts or receivables. There is a separate Sharia standard on bay'ud-dayn. I think it's Sharia standard number 59, if I'm not mistaken. It's not part of the curriculum, so you can skip it for now. Of course, you should read it after the exam. Sale of expected future cash flow, it also has some gharar, hence it has to be well agreed upon, especially when it's part of the valuation, etc. Sale of property illegally possessed by a third party, sale of stolen goods. Sale of stolen goods is just battle, is just a void completely. Other terms of the contract like price not specified, period of payment not specified, those are also some areas of gharar. One should look for any. This is why we'll see in Murabaha, the price needs to be specified. In Salam Istisna, price needs to be specified. Tawarruq, right? Ijara, the rent or the fee needs to be specified. Ju'ala, the commission needs to be specified. Wakala, if there is fee, the agency fee needs to be specified. Everywhere we have to specify the subject matter and also the counter value of the contract. In Musharaka, Mudaraba, the profit sharing ratio needs to be specified. If it is not specified, then it will go to the default practice of the society. If there is no default practice, then it's no longer valid. So in Mudaraba, for example, the Mudarim will just get a rent, ujra, some salary because of the time he has employed. So again, this is the fundamental reason or basis, Sharia basis, for which we will find in many Sharia standards, across many Sharia standards, a lot of permissibility or impermissibility has been mentioned because of such gharars there. This session was brought to you by TAIF and Adl. If you have benefited from it, please share in your social media platforms about both the entities and share the word. Spread the word. Jazakumullah khairan.